I don't know. Say it with me. I don't know. Good God, it is liberating. I am a towering mountain of ignorance. I don't know. We're taught to believe that everything has a reason. And so we observe the world, we see what happened, and then we define the thing that happened as the reason the thing happened. But I think a lot of the time we end up mixing up thinking something with knowing something. This is why it can be so impossible to talk about certain topics with certain people. They've tied those suppositions to themselves so tightly with knots of narrative and constructed reality and values that there's just no untying it. And maybe unsurprisingly, in those situations, the best course of action is just to be friends. Maybe even ask them about that thing that they've created, because to them, it's immensely valuable. The world as we perceive it, as we've built it inside of ourselves, is a lie that we tell to ourselves, not out of deception, but out of necessity. We have no other choice. We simply cannot understand the world as it is, and so we construct. But sometimes I just have to tell myself the thing that is definitely true, the truest thing I can say, which is that I don't know.
Never know.
This is the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast with Bob Pondillo and Cass Midgley.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 170 of the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. Today, Dr. Bob Pondillo and I converse with Dustin Lawson. The great 19th century writer Henry David Thoreau wrote, "How vain it is to sit down to write when you have not stood up to live." Dustin definitely stood up and lived before he sat down to write. He's written 8 books, of which we discuss in this episode. Dustin spent a year traveling all over North America, Europe, and the Middle East as the assistant to Christian apologist Josh McDowell. Dustin took McDowell's advice and rigorously scrutinized all the arguments he was espousing, only to find holes that McDowell couldn't defend. After losing his faith and completing a bachelor's degree in religion and a master's in global politics, he tried to enter the military. But because of a brief bout with cancer at age 20, they turned him down. In fact, they turned him down 13 times over 5 years before letting him in. He's now a public affairs officer in the National Guard. During basic training, Dustin won the Ironman Award for having the highest physical fitness score in his company of over 200 soldiers. He's an impressive dude for sure, and you're going to enjoy this conversation. It's a shorter episode today. We didn't have a long talk with Dustin, and I don't have a lot to say. A couple of announcements here. Our guest back on episode 131, Amber Cantorna, you may remember, is the daughter of a Focus on the Family executive and was disowned by her parents when she came out as gay. She remains a Christian and has unpacked her story in much detail in her new book coming out tomorrow titled Refocusing My Family. You can find it on Amazon. You can also contact her and see the dates of her book tour at her website, ambercantorna.com. Amber, A-M-B-E-R, Cantorna is C-A-N-T-O-R-N-A.com. This last week, I saw Father John Misty in concert in Nashville. It was amazing. I went with a friend, but we ended up sitting separate. So I wasn't distracted and thus was caught in the tractor beam of this powerful human being, Josh Tillman, the singer-songwriter of the band. I sort of realized something was happening in me during the show, but fully understood the next day. I was seeing myself, my future self had I left Christianity in college when I wanted to. You know this poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken? 2 roads diverged in yellow wood. And way back then, my choice made all the difference. And I don't know if you think about this or not, but I saw myself on the stage. Had I chosen my doubts when I was in college. Now, when I was in college, I doubled down on my faith after having doubts, and the subsequent 20 years led me deeper and deeper into evangelical Christianity. But it was interesting to see, I think this is why the multiverse appeals to so many of us, is is that there is a universe somewhere where I chose differently. And but, at the end of the day, this is the one in which I find myself. And but I connected with Josh Tillman's view of life and romance and love, his view of religion and capitalism. He smokes, he dances weird, he uses strange time signatures in his music. He's primarily a drummer, but learned piano and guitar as a songwriter. And if I had left Christianity in my 20s and continued to be a singer-songwriter and a drummer and all that I was, then that performance Tuesday was like looking at past, future me. It makes me think of how many decisions I've made because I lacked personal agency, and I did what others thought I should do, or what God thought I should do. Sitting there Tuesday night, I resolved, as much as one can, to stop letting other people steer my life, and instead follow my heart, trust my heart, something we were not allowed to do as Christians. And knowing some of those decisions are going to disappoint people, maybe even hurt them. Sometimes I've used the phrase before as far as my moral guidepost, do no harm. This is where it kind of falls apart. Is that sometimes the right thing to do and the moral thing to do is going to, in fact, hurt some people. And you should obviously judge that with a lot of discernment and a lot of thought. But sometimes you're going to have to make choices for yourself that people get hurt. And that's tough. But this is part, I don't know if it's part of maturity or if it's just part of reality, but it just seems to be one of the harder decisions to make when it comes to following your heart, and it's going to hurt some people. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of meeting someone or witnessing something and you felt that could have been my life. And I mean that in a positive way. Had I listened to myself, had I thought it through a little more, because now with the benefit of hindsight, we look back at our lives and think that was stupid. But at the time, we did the best we could with what we thought was right. However, had we more agency, had we more wherewithal, self-awareness, we might have been able to make a better decision. And I took a lot of risks in my life that turned out to be dead wrong, very painful, very costly for myself and everybody in my wake. And that includes my wife and children and people in the churches that I pastored and different things. And I'm telling you, your life, I don't know about you, but your life can be that. We talk about Judgment Day someday when God's going to play the videotape of your life and say, yeah, you got some explaining to do. And the horror of having to give account for your life. And, we are our own worst bullies in our own heads when it comes to this kind of self-judgment, self-shame, self-accusation. And, it really hurts when other people in your life, your family, your friends, kind of join in that chorus of wagging the finger at the way your life has turned out. And what this can lead to is a sense of lack. Now, I'm telling you, I'm the first one to admit that there's a lot of thinking out there about lack. And, you may be aware of just how insidious it is in your daily life and the detrimental impact it has on your own overall happiness. That if you see your life through the lens of lack, then it's almost like you're always going to be wanting that thing. I'll be happy when. And there is something to be said about the gold in your own backyard and saying yes to what is, as far as embracing the now moment. And this is where I find myself. And if I look at it through the lens of lack, then I'm going to be just perpetually disappointed. The other pitfall, or like the other ditch on the other side of the road, is telling yourself, and I got to quote this, I wrote this down. I was doing some searching on this lack thing, and there was literally a person who prescribed this, and I'll quote this: release all thoughts of lack and think in terms of unlimited abundance, unlimited money, unlimited friendships, unlimited time, unlimited opportunities, and sense how good it feels in the body to dwell on these thoughts of abundance, unquote. And I just thought, I think that looking at your life through the lens of lack is a lie that's going to fuck you up. But this lens of like abundance of friends, abundance of money, abundance of time, that's just as much a lie. So somewhere in the middle of, blowing smoke up your own ass for all the abundance of things, here's the truth. Everything in the universe is finite. Money, friendships, time, energy, all of it finite. So fuck that abundance shit. But also, it's just as stupid to say, oh, I'm really lacking something here. And you probably are, but it's just not going to serve you to dwell on those things in which you lack. And so I know it's an old school thought, but if you just think of 5 things you're grateful for, before you know it, you're realizing, oh my God, there's a lot going on here. This is the gold in your own backyard. And this is how one is able to say yes to what is. We taped this conversation on August 26th, 2017. We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world is a better place when more people live by sight and not by faith. Subscribe to our podcast or leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can support us monetarily in 2 easy ways through Patreon. That's patreon.com/EA podcast, or you can leave a lump sum donation through PayPal at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. If you're a listener to the podcast and would like to be added to the private support group on Facebook, please friend me on Facebook, private message me or something to indicate how you're related to the show, why you want to be in the group. I do screen the applicants briefly to protect the confidentiality of the group. Our opening monologue is an excerpt from a YouTube by Hank Green titled Towering Mountain of Ignorance. The music behind it is Never Know by Jack Johnson. The segue music on this episode was performed by Sam Mayer on a handpan in the New York City subway. Thanks for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is. So our guest today is Dustin Lawson, and where are you calling from, Dustin?
I'm actually in Los Angeles right now.
Cool. That's where you live?
No. I just got back from deployment. I was in Kosovo for about 9-10 months and got back about 3 weeks ago. So Ohio is home, but probably going to be moving, and this is one of the potential locations that I might be moving to.
Okay,
so
cool.
Here.
Yeah, where in Ohio?
Columbus area, about 30-40 minutes north of Columbus, a little town called Mount Vernon.
Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with that. I'm from Ohio. So, very cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, Dustin, this is my co-host, Bob.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, nice to meet you, man. I read all about you in the stuff that you sent, and I also got your Freethinkers book, and I was looking through that.
Oh,
as well.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
How would you describe it? As sort of a, like a basic understanding of what a freethinker is and how it came to be?
Yeah, it was just me trying to summarize how I process the world now, how I process truth now, whereas before I filtered life through basically principles of dogma.
Yeah.
Where I had to get certainty. So what does it take for me to get certainty? Now I realize certainty is kind of ridiculous, and I need to challenge everything. I need to challenge myself most of all, because that was the biggest change for me. I finally started looking in the mirror and challenging my own beliefs more than I challenged everybody else's. One of my favorite quotes, this English historian named Thomas Fuller, he wrote, "Truth fears no trial."
Yeah.
And for me, that was, with a dogmatic mind, I thought, I need to protect truth with quotes around it. My beliefs as truth, so I need to challenge everybody else. But then I finally realized, if I really think what I believe is true, then true conviction would be challenging my own beliefs and then challenging the world to challenge my views, because only false ideas fear inquiry.
Yep.
Oh, well said. Yeah, I agree, too.
Well, and I think what is worth pointing out, and I think one of the reasons why I can't remember how I found you, or if you found me, or if you I got interested in having you on, and I think I pursued you. But you were once on a mission to become a Christian apologist.
That is true, yes. I went to college to become a preacher. About halfway through college, I began reading a lot of Josh McDowell's books and realized this is what I really want to do. Yeah. I want to reason people to Jesus, and how do I get in touch with this guy? And I found the internship opportunity with him, basically his personal assistant for a year. And my senior year of college, I hounded his secretary a lot until I finally got the job, and then I spent a year after college traveling all over North America, Europe, and the Middle East with him, basically preparing myself to be the next him. And then, I mean, it was an amazing opportunity. Small-town country boy, saw the world, though, and experienced a lot of different cultures. And honestly, Josh is the one who led me to my skepticism, because he challenged me about two-thirds of the way through the year. He's like, if you want as much conviction in this as I have, and you want to do what I do, then you need to challenge everything you believe, because you'll come away with it with greater conviction.
Wow.
And I didn't take him up on it at first, but it just kind of hit me about a month before we were done. He was on the stage going through arguments that I'd heard him go through 100 times, and I'd used 100 times, and it just hit me that one of the argument wasn't that good. It was missing a couple steps in the process of proving something. And then that night on the tour bus, I just kind of pulled my curtain back and I went through all of the arguments from probably his most famous book, or second most famous book, Mourning a Carpenter, and I realized that they all had these holes in them, and it kind of unraveled from there, and it turned into about a 10-month process of me challenging everything before I finally came to the conclusion that I'm an agnostic.
Yeah. Did you happen to run those by him and get his reaction?
I did. When the year ended, we talked, and I was like, I need some time to think. I wasn't completely honest with him about my level of skepticism at that point, and then this went in my searching, and no joke, I didn't want to just do nothing but just challenge stuff, so I went to grad school as well. I was at Regent University during my process of challenging everything, so I was at Pat Robertson's school.
Yeah.
So the night when I finally confirmed I was an agnostic, I was in the library there at Regent about 11:30 at night, and I closed the book I was reading, which was Jesus Beyond the Grave by the Internet Infidels. And I just stared at the wall for about a half hour, kind of disillusioned. And finally, I just said out loud to myself, I'm an agnostic. I have no idea what the truth is, neither does anybody else. And
wow.
About a week later, I said, I walked out of that building. So there I am. Hollywood couldn't have written any better. To my left was the cross-shaped building where the 700 Club was filmed. To my right was Pat Robertson's house. And I was, in my disillusioned state, I was able to kind of appreciate the moment of this is about the most ironic place for this to happen.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
I sent a message to McDowell and finally told him, like, look, we got to talk. This is what's happened. This is where I am. And so I booked a flight. I flew out to Iowa where his tour was at the time and spent a couple days with him. And then one morning, he and I just spent an hour in the lobby of the hotel debating, talking with each other. And I'll be honest, on the way there, the whole time I was hoping that he had some like ace in the hole arguments that he hadn't put in a book or said on a stage. He was just like saving for someone like me. But after an hour, I realized he was just going through the same arguments, and I realized he had nothing else. And if Josh McDowell, the guy who's done more research to try and prove this stuff through historical investigation than anybody else in history probably, can't get me any further, then that was the final straw. And he ended by saying, I think you have a problem with your epistemology. Said this to me. And that kind of turned me off. I'm like, man, you're the one who challenged me to challenge all this stuff, and now you're upset because I came to different conclusions. I just put it on trial and let it go where I was like, I don't care if it destroys me. I need legitimacy. But yeah, the epistemology thing kind of turned me off.
Right. Epistemology is how we know what we know. And yeah. So you were looking at the same sources that he was looking at and coming with a different conclusion. Right. Yeah.
Right. The argument where it started, like that night when he was talking and I was backstage running the sound and the PowerPoint and stuff, it was the argument, a person doesn't die for a lie that they know is a lie, so the disciples wouldn't have willingly died for their belief in the resurrection if it wasn't true. Sounds great when you first hear it. I used it many times, but that night, for some reason, I thought, wait a minute. First, you have to prove that the disciples did, in fact, specifically die for their belief in the resurrection, which we can't prove at all.
Right.
It doesn't even say that in the Bible. In the second-hand sources, what good are those? It's 2,000 years ago, words on paper. And then, secondly, you have to prove that the disciples even existed, which we can't do either. And I just realized that you have to prove those two things before you can. It's a good argument that you don't die for a lie that you know is a lie. And that's when I just went through all the other arguments, realized they all skip steps as well. And that's kind of where it began on that.
It reminds me of a book that I read by John Shelby Spong that kind of questioned the existence of the disciples, or the number. You know, it was a big deal that there was 12, and in fact, we don't.
Yeah, we don't know.
That's 12. Not sure.
Might be something resident of the culture, the idea of 12 and months and zodiac and all that shit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the most pertinent thing to the theme of our show about your journey is the fact that by studying your faith so vigorously, that's the context in which it fell apart for you. And what we do here, Dustin, is we interview people that have deconverted, and oftentimes it's devastating. It's lonely, it's painful, it's scary, and so we just try to share people's stories so that the listener goes, "Oh, I'm not alone." You know, even if I'm in Mississippi or something, you know, where they might be the only atheist that they know of, but when they, you know, get online and listen to other people's stories, they think, "Oh, I must not be as crazy as I thought," or whatever.
Yeah. I tell you, I needed that. I had to look at. I had to go find groups, and because it like you said, it was devastating. I mean, he's a president from Ohio, Garfield. He wrote that the truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable. that defined my journey of reason. Yeah. Because I built my entire life on it. I mean, I was a preacher, and so I lost most of my friends, all my connections as far as career goes. Had some family issues because there's some people that still take it seriously, and a lot of preachers were coming and taking me out to lunch and trying to get me to come back to preaching, and it was very lonely, and the clergy project was helpful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what year did all this break down for you? Like, how recent was this deconversion?
2007 would have been 2006 and 7 is when I worked with McDowell, and then 2007 and 8 would have been the process of falling away.
So let's go all the way back to your childhood, where were your parents? Were you raised Christian?
Yeah, my parents divorced when I was 1. I'd stay with my mom Monday through Friday, my dad on the weekends. And my dad didn't go to church, but he remarried. And my stepmom, after a year or two into the marriage, she began taking us to church. So that's how I began going back to church. Because my mom went to church, but I only went to church if I stayed with her on the weekends. So it wasn't pushed on me by my parents. My dad was very much against religion most of my childhood, and he kind of came around to it. So I kind of led him to it, and then I fell away from it. And then he's like, "What's going on?" And
what denomination? What area of church?
Church of Christ would have been early childhood, and then Baptist from like 6th grade on.
Okay.
How many books do you have written out there?
8.
You have 8 books. Are they mostly self-published, or are they published? Or
they're on Amazon?
Mostly. The first couple were traditional route. After hundreds of rejections, finally got a couple of them published, and then after a couple of years, decided to just do it myself. I thought more bang for the buck if I do it myself.
Okay, so do you mind rattling off the titles?
Sure. The first one, nonfiction, Christian agnostic. That was me kind of in my transition phase where I was trying to show that the Bible's more open-minded than what the church portrays it. So I was trying to create a space for me that I could still fit within it. But I do think the Bible's more open-minded. I mean, I could go on and on about what's actually in that book.
Right.
And then mostly novels. Eden Found was the first novel, and the premise is, basically I had the idea, Jesus is the story of the one sinless man in a world of sinners. What if the story was reversed and it's the one sinner in a world of sinless people? So Adam and Eve don't eat the forbidden fruit, and it opens 70 years into Eden's existence, so there's 300 sinless people, and one person gives in. So it's one sinner in a world of sinless people. And then the next one is kind of more, the most personal one. It's called The God-Fearing Atheist, and the premise is a man born with multiple personality disorder, and as he grows up, one personality becomes an atheist and the other one becomes a believer in God. And then in chapter 1, he dies. Chapter 2, it's his court case outside the gates of heaven. How does a soul that has within it both an atheist and a believer judged? And
great idea.
And then Playing for Truth. It's probably the shortest one, about 100 pages. And think of Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Only it's basketball. And this guy struggling with the question: which is the path to truth, the path of faith or the path of doubt. And he begins hearing voices, and they finally lead him to this rundown basketball court on the edge of town where the forest and the city meet. And out from the forest comes all the founders of every religion, from Moses to Abraham to Jesus to Buddha. And out of the city comes famous philosophers and skeptics from history, team faith versus team doubt, and they want him to be the ref. So he refs a game, 4-quarter game, and it kind of patterns. The 4 quarters it's kind of like history, so team faith goes way up, gets ahead by like 30, 40 points, and then as the Renaissance and the Enlightenment happen, and then the theory of evolution, reason comes back, and I won't give away the ending, but basically it helps resolve his answer to that question. What's the path to the truth? The path of faith, the path of doubt.
Yeah,
Wow.
but I like the historical timeline thing, and I think if you were still writing it today, we'd have to have this chapter where evangelicals have really gathered around Trump and in support of that.
My theory was, or my standard was that you had to be dead to be on one of the teams.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So Christopher Hitchens is the last person for Team Doubt.
Yeah.
And Team Faith, last person's L. Ron Hubbard.
Okay.
Wow. That's great. What a great idea. Yeah.
So one of the things that's unique to your story is that you tried over and over and over again to get into the military, and you were rejected, and you finally got in, and you've kind of made a career of it, it sounds like. And talk about that.
I was planning on going to basic training between my junior and senior year of college, and then going to officer candidate school the summer after, just the reserves, so that I could still be a preacher. But my spring semester of my junior year, I got cancer 3 months before basic training. And I was cured before I even knew I had it, because I went into surgery knowing that it might be cancer, but not for sure. And then a week after, and I woke and it was cancer. But a week after the surgery, the test results came back negative, so the surgery had done the job. But cancer, military sees a C word, and you're going to get rejected. And they didn't really give me a timeline of how much remission I had to have. They'd say 2 years, they'd say 5 years, so I just kept trying, and I got rejected 13 times over the span of about 5.5 years before they finally let me in.
Wow.
And that was in 2010, 2011 time frame.
Okay, so after you left the faith, that's when you kind of pursued that career instead of preaching, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go from thinking you're helping people with their eternal lives to find something that can fill a void of meaning on that level.
Yes.
And I knew serving my country was never going to fill that void that much, but I still kind of, I don't know, just was hoping that it would help on some level.
Well, absolutely. I think most people have a desire to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Yeah. And next to the kingdom of God and all the grand narrative of Christianity, I think serving your country is probably...
It's up there.
It makes sense. It'd be like the next best thing.
Yeah.
And honest.
Yeah.
Like it's actually helping.
So getting to work with your pal, Josh, right?
Yeah. Josh McDowell.
You tried and tried and tried, kept knocking on the door, and then after you were rejected from the military, you kept knocking on the door. You're a very persistent young man, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's once persistence works once, you start to
believe in it.
Maybe this life isn't going to make things easy, but maybe this persistence thing will work out.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of stand in awe of people like you because I see you as an overachiever and, just a doer in whatever you put your hand to, whatever you put your mind to.
Yeah, and dive deep, too.
Yeah,
and
lazy people like myself. I'm like that, I got my back against the wall and the arms crossed going, wow, he's got a lot of energy.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, honestly, when I was a preacher, when I was a Christian, I was different on some. I mean, I was persistent with McDowell because I wanted that job so bad. But on some level, I thought God's going to take care of it, so I don't have to be as persistent. If I have to be persistent, that means maybe it's not God's will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But now that that's gone, it's like, okay, this is just the way the world works. I'm going to have to be a persistent SOB if I'm going to get what I want. So.
All right, so you were unpacking your books. I don't think we got all the way to the 8th one.
No, then My master's is in global politics, so I delve with politics a little bit. The ghost of democracy. The premise is that the White House is haunted, and the president is the only one it haunts. And they've been haunting the presidency, not for the entire history of the U.S., but since the administration of Teddy Roosevelt. And their goal is to, with each president, haunt them into killing a little bit of democracy during their administration, so it's so subtle that people don't actually realize it's happening. So basically the idea is, how do you kill a democracy without the country ever knowing its democracy died? And that's what the ghost of the haunt the White House goal is.
That's another great idea. That's a movie right there.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
That's the hope, yeah.
Oh, that's the hope. Oh, great. So have you written a screenplay, or are you going for the
not for that. More treatment, which is just like basically a summary of what, for a producer, what it would look like.
Yeah.
They're obviously not going to read the whole novel.
That is awesome. So you're going to have some kind of creature, some kind of ghost that shows up, and who is that ghost going to be? Who's going to play that part?
There's many ghosts in the White House, but that would give away probably too much if I told you.
Okay, yes, yeah. I'll just read the book. That's what I'm serious. Why not?
Okay.
Sounds like a good plan.
So what's next?
Then the Fundamentals of Free Thinking.
That's the one
which is very short, like 30 pages. That's the kind of my treatise on open-mindedness and how I feel best to process searching for truth. And then I wrote one that's more personal for me, just called Lawson's Life Laws, which is just like a 30-page book that I haven't even, it's only for myself. It's just something I use on a daily basis to help. It's kind of like my personal Bible on some level, right, that I wrote for myself. And then the last book is called The Girl from Greece. And this is the one that's kind of why I'm in LA right now. On my deployment to Kosovo, our JAG officer, he told me the story of his 96-year-old grandfather, Alessandro Rasil, who fought for Italy during World War II. And so he fought with the Nazis for 2.5 years. And then after Mussolini fell in September of 43, he was on a Greek island in Cephalonia. The Italian soldiers were given the option, okay, do you want to continue to fight with the Nazis, or do you want to come home? And the Nazis on the island said, hey, we want you to fight with us. If you're going home, please leave your weapons. But they weren't going to leave their weapons because they knew their weapons would be used against the Allies, who they now fight for. And so they resisted. Their division of 16,000 got decimated, and only less than 1,000 survived, and he was one of the ones that survived. Wow. And he became a POW under Nazi Germany for the last part of the war, and they treated him like a traitor, so they treated him horribly. And then at the end of the war, I mean, they sent him to the front lines in the east, so he was in Russia helping Germany. But the Soviets obviously kept pushing him back, and so he was constantly having to retreat with the Nazis. And the Russians just bombed indiscriminately because they didn't like the Italians, even if they were their allies now, because they fought against them for a few years. And at the end of the war, the Soviets took over the prisoners of the Nazis, so he was a POW under the Soviets, and they treated him horribly as well. His main job was clearing minefields by walking through the fields to see.
Jeez.
And fortunately, he didn't find any mines, but some of his friends did. He would see them blow up near him because they would hit a mine. Then they would starve him, and on and on. But after the war, he came to the U.S. But during the war, he wrote his experiences on pieces of paper and would hide them in his clothes. And after the war, he compiled them all in a journal. And Captain Mingo, the soldier that was on the deployment with me, the grandson, told me about it, and I said, give me the journal, and I'll turn it into a book. And the grandfather, he, for 7 decades, had this journal. He'd wanted to tell his story, but he was kind of afraid to in the U.S. because he fought with the Nazis for 2.5 years. But 96 years old, he's like, I don't care anymore. The story needs to be told. Yeah. And so I turned it into a book. And last weekend, I was in New York, in Queens, to meet him for the first time, and had a videographer there, so I had a couple TV stations who were going to do a story on it.
Oh, my gosh, he's still alive.
Yeah, 96.
He is, yeah, 96, yeah.
Wow.
And he, really bad Parkinson's, so the interview was, the grandson was sitting there on the couch next to him, helping me understand what he was saying, but his mind's still sharp. And
what a story.
So I didn't know Italy and Germany became enemies, so I felt ignorant when I learned that. I feel like a lot of the world probably doesn't realize that after Mussolini fell, it helps Italy save face, because like all his soldiers, they didn't want to fight with the Nazis, but they just felt compelled because Mussolini was their leader, but they finally got to show what they really wanted afterwards, and given the chance, they resisted tyranny. Yeah. it's part of the story. We've had World War II told from so many different aspects, but I
Yeah.
don't think this is a unique one.
Well, I don't know what else to go. I mean, I think we want to get to the lion taming part.
Yeah,
That's a
let's-
fascinating part of his story.
Well, that was the first thing when I read the the dossier, the stuff that you sent on you.
Yeah.
That, and then I went to your website.
Dossier, what a word now.
Yeah, really. That's right. Yeah. Anyway, when I read that and then went to your website, I saw pictures of you as a kid. I mean, well, maybe not a kid, but certainly in the your teenager years.
I was about 15 when I started.
Yeah, and you were taming lions
And tigers.
and it's like what?
We never
What?
say tame, we just say trained.
Okay,
You
not
can take the
tame.
animal out of the jungle, but you can't take the jungle out of the animal.
Okay.
That's all I say.
All right. Now, tell us
But-
that story. How'd you get into that?
Sure. Is actually the church that helped me get that job because I was teaching Vacation Bible School, and it was a safari theme. And the last day of VBS, they had this place bring their lion and tiger cub there, and that's where I met the owners. And I was like, "Is there any way I can be around your animals and work with them?" And they told me about the training program, and I took a couple months to convince my parents to let their 15-year-old son work with lions and tigers, but I did. And for 8 years, all throughout high school and college, I did that job. All through high school, I mean, after the more I got experience with it, the more I became, this is what I want to do for a career. I'm going to go to Ohio State, which is just down the road, and major in zoology and broadcasting, and the Columbus Zoo is just down the road from Ohio State, which Jack Hanna runs, and so I could work with him maybe and be the next Jack Hanna, and that was kind of my path that I was going to take until my pastor preached a sermon about not wasting your life right before we graduated high school, and I talked to him personally afterwards, and he basically convinced me that if I devoted my life to animals and not souls, I'd be wasting my life. So that's when I changed
Really?
course.
Yeah.
Oh.
But one of the reasons I was able to go in the cage with the lions and tigers is because before every time I went in the cage, I would think, and I remember very clearly thinking this when I was 15, right before going in the cage for the first time, that I have a divine destiny to fulfill, and so I'm not going to get killed in here. So the dogma actually is what helped give me the confidence to do that so many years.
I get that.
I
yeah.
look back now like, wow,
Yeah.
you got really lucky, Lawson.
You did get lucky.
Yeah.
Wow. And not that lucky. As I recall, there was a moment when some animal ate your foot or something, grabbed your shoe, or tell us that.
Yeah, there was a lot of close calls. I mean, I got bit many times, not like badly bit, but I've had a tiger's mouth around my neck twice. Her name was Simba, the tiger who did it. It happened the first time I was in the cage, and it happened once during the winter. I slipped on the ice and fell on my back, and it was like a cub. She came over to embrace me, but she put her mouth around my neck. It was like she was, I don't know, protecting almost.
Trying to pick
but
you
she
up,
didn't
maybe.
obviously bite down.
Yeah.
But then she let go and walked away when she saw I was okay. But the most vivid moment of being attacked would have been my senior year of high school. A tiger named Imara that I raised from a cub. She bit my left foot and then took off running, dragging me with her. And I have that running shoe, that left running shoe. It sits on my shelf, and with 6 holes in it. It kind of goes with me wherever I live. And fortunately for me, we had another trainer that was there. He's like a 5th-degree black belt, about 250 pounds. He gave her a Chuck Norris roundhouse to the face and got her to let go of me. And
Wow.
all the trainers pulled me out of the cage.
So here's
Changed my pants a little bit. Not much damage was done to my foot, but psychologically it took me about 3 or 4 months before I could go back in the cage.
Yeah,
oh,
for
sure. So here's this little creature that you raised from a baby, from cubhood, and you'd think, well, and
Yes.
you probably nuzzled her and was sweet with her and stuff, and she with you, and then something snapped. She was hungry. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we were playing rough. I probably played too rough with her as a cub, and those same habits carried over. So I'll take some of the blame for that.
Oh wow.
But yeah, she likes feet. She had a foot fetish, and she tried. Number one rule is never turn your back. Number 2 rule is stay on your feet, because you can defend yourself on your feet. But she knew that too.
Wow.
My gosh.
So Dustin,
Jeez.
in all your journeys, you part of the where I want to kind of end up is that your deconversion, was it a disappointment, or did it break any relationships in your life with your family or friends?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was the preacher on the stage who would get in front of the thousands of people, and so I was the leader, or the one that a lot of friends looked up to. And when my doubts began, and I became pretty vocal about them, that friends, they would have a conversation with me and try to see what happened and try to bring me back. But once they realized my mind was free, they usually broke ties with me. And I stay in touch with some. We don't talk about religion really, and it hurt some family relationships as well. With my stepmom, definitely, she still takes religion and Christianity very seriously. And a lot of pastors they would take me out to lunch and try to bring me back, but that's pretty much gone by the wayside, especially after the last time was, pastor took me to a faith healing service in Columbus, and he's like, when you see this guy, you'll be back preaching. And this was a Friday night, and he said, you'll be preaching Sunday morning after you see this guy. And as we went into the church, and this beautiful 35-year-old woman in a wheelchair was wheeling herself in, and I stopped and talked to her to see what happened. She told me her story, that she'd been paralyzed for 10 years, car accident. And she looked like you could tell by the look in her face, she thought she was walking out of that church. And I when she was out of earshot, I told the preacher that brought me, I was like, if she walks out of here, I'll preach on Sunday morning. And he's like, okay. And inside, the dude, tried to talk about his books for like 30 minutes, the traveling faith healer. And then he did his personal ministry time where people would get in a line and come up and to be healed. And he was like healing, like he was making pacemakers disappear and false hips turn back into real bone, stuff you can't actually see and tell. But anyway, when he saw the girl in the wheelchair about 10 people back, he stopped and said to the crowd, sometimes the healing's not instantaneous, sometimes it starts here and it takes months. Like he was getting himself an out. And when she finally got up to him, he prayed for her to be blessed. He didn't even pray for her to be healed. And then she wheeled herself on. And it was like I was the only one in the whole auditorium that saw what happened. Because everyone else just like, they blocked it out and moved on to the next person, or cheering for that person's headache to be healed and whatever else thing that you can't really verify. And afterwards, the preacher that brought me, he's like, man, did you see all those healings? And I pointed to the girl in the wheelchair. I'm like, that was our standard. And it was like, just the confirmation bias. It'd be so clear that this is what every dogmatic mind does, a confirmation bias to the nth degree. And I was like, don't ever ask me, don't ever do this again. This was the final straw.
Yeah. I mean, really, when you think about it, how cruel to do that to a person.
Oh yeah,
you know
they
what
destroyed
I mean?
her. She thought it was her fate.
It was her day.
Why would you do that to a person?
And she thought it was her weak faith that made it not happen.
Yeah, it's her fault. Oh yeah, sure. Jesus.
So, Dustin, I guess you're 10 years out, and are you in a relationship with anyone romantically?
No, deployment kind of. I met a girl before the deployment. I was in D.C. at the Reason rally actually last summer.
Oh, cool.
This is 2 months before deployment, and I met a girl, and she kind of took my breath away, and stayed. I'm just kind of kicking myself with how bad the timing was, because I'm leaving it to be deployed for a year. Stayed in touch with her. She lives in D.C. I went and visited her after the deployment, and I think there would be something there if I moved to D.C., but I haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
But so no, that was when you're raised in the church, you're taught that God's preparing a woman for you.
Yeah.
And He's going to lead you two together. I was like, oh, good, the burden's off me. I don't have to. But once that was taken away, once that fell by the wayside, that belief, I just became overwhelmed with the reality that, oh shit, this is on me.
Yeah.
I have to somehow find a good match out of all the possibilities out here. And it just kind of, I don't know, I guess that sometimes it affects me. Like if I go on a date, talking to a girl, it seems really interesting, and then I look around like, how do I know that one over there isn't a better suited match? It's just random chance.
Yeah,
and
it is.
So for me, it took a long time to deal with how to process finding someone, because I honestly am one of those people that truly gave every aspect of my life to God.
Yeah.
And taking all those parts back has been a long journey.
Yeah. I think the number one marker of whether or not you'll have a success with a female, if you're looking at a partner, is proximity. You have to be in the same area.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Long-term stuff ain't gonna work.
It's hard. It's very difficult.
So when we started this talk, you're in LA, but you're kind of looking for a place to live. I'm just curious as to like what's your criteria? Where do you think you're going to land and why?
Oh, well, I guess the reason I'm in Los Angeles right now, the main reason is because coincidentally, ironically, another one of the grandsons of Alessandro Rosil, the World War II veteran, is a producer who made a Oscar-winning documentary a few years ago. And he doesn't live out here. He's actually a doctor who owns 11 urgent cares, but producing is his real passion. He's out here for this week as well, so I'm going to be meeting with him sometime this week to talk about
That's excellent.
rights.
That's outstanding, man. Good.
And
That's the hard stuff, man, getting connected with the right people.
Yeah, that is.
It's like a used car lot out there. You don't know who to trust.
Yes.
That's for sure.
That's true. I had dinner last night with a friend who he's in the military as well, but he's an actor out here. And he was just talking to me about the business, talking to me about dating, talking to me about getting connected, talking to me about how can you trust people, and because everyone can put up a sincere face and then backstab you the next day.
Bullshit. Yeah, pretty much.
But I mean, ultimately, I would love to write and do this kind of stuff right now. Talk about this. For the rest of my life. Like I was on Capitol Hill interviewing. I'm a public affairs officer in the military, so media relations is.
Yeah. What branch of service are you in?
The Army National Guard.
Army. Okay. All right.
Suit and tie, interviewing with, ironically, the judicial. Well, I forgot the exact title, but basically they're the ones in charge of impeachments. That's one of their main jobs. And I was just sitting there asking all the right questions, but I'm like, I don't want to be the spokesperson for a politician or their cause. I don't want to do this. This isn't me. It's what I'm trained to do, but I don't know. I probably feel more comfortable or more out here as far as a writer, but I don't know. So it's still up in the air.
Yeah. I hear you.
Gotta make some decisions.
Yeah, I think you are. I mean, you are a writer. You're very prolific. You've written a lot of, not only normal, what do they call it, the nonfiction, but novels and fiction as well. And you can kind of see the story taking shape. So that's a gift. So that's pretty cool.
So Dustin,
break. You gotta do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Bob here is he makes short films. And so I'll send you a link to the films he's made. Yeah,
and we're working on some an actual feature length narrative film. So that may happen. Cool. We'll see.
Definitely, the more connections, the better.
Yeah, couldn't hurt, huh? Yeah.
Well, I think your life is fascinating, and
what a strange, zigzaggy kind of. You never think of that would happen, but it does. It's great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't write your biography before you live it. That's what I tell myself.
Yeah.
I tried. I thought I had it all written out.
Yeah.
If you try that, you have to do a lot of editing along the way.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Or God had it all written out.
Yeah, right.
Right. I'll tell you an interesting story. Yesterday, it was for research. I went to the headquarters of the Church of Scientology yesterday, the big blue building.
Man, yeah.
Downtown Hollywood.
Yeah.
And when they asked what your name is and write it down, I gave them the name of one of my characters from my novel, and I didn't give them any of my information. I just wanted to experience it firsthand. And they're like, "So what brings you in today?" Because they've probably had a lot of people come in just to after the documentaries and stuff. And I said, "Well, I've heard a lot of stuff about this place. I just thought I should come and see it for myself and let that be the final judgment or my final assessment." Like, oh, that's good to hear, because and so they took me through the process, and I probably let on. Maybe I'm a good actor, I don't know, but I acted like I was really engaged and acted like I was really interested and acted like I was open to this stuff and just hearing what you had to say. And it's like you go in one room and they give you an introduction and they assess your interest level, and I just kept showing interest, so they take you on to the next level. Like, I'm getting too far back into this building. I think I need to I might need to put a stop to this.
Wow.
Because finally they took you into a little dark theater, and you watch not feature length, but feature they really they spend a lot of money on it's good production value.
Oh yeah.
And it's like a 10-minute video on Dianetics and just how it can set your mind free from all the pain in your life. And afterwards they come in and they tried to get me to pay $50 for the book Dianetics and some other stuff, and then once they are aggressive and they are persistent. And it's a little creepy, but it was just like looking into the eyes of what I used to be. It's kind of why I do stuff like that, is just to remind myself of how dogmatic my mind was.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Did they put you on one of those machines?
Yeah, they invited me back. What's that?
Did they put you on one of those machines?
They wanted to. That was next. They wanted to give me an auditing session.
Yeah, that's what it is, an audit. Yeah.
Nah, I'm good. Mm-hmm. But the person who led me through the tour the most, she finally at the end told me she was trying to emphasize how seriously she took this stuff and believed in it. She's worked at that place for 13 years, 7 days a week, all volunteer.
Wow.
My gosh.
And I was just, that took me back. I was like, whoa, this one's really far in. She's one of the auditors too. So she's at that level.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's like some type of...
They invited me back to church this morning at 11. I almost considered going. I was like, nah, that's probably too far. I'd be the only one there. They would swarm, and they probably would figure out that I gave them the wrong name and wonder why who I really was.
Yeah, track you down, kneecap you, something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I wanted to wrap up with I don't know, some lighthearted questions. Like I think a guy like you who's cerebral and serious and everything, what do you do for fun, or is there a favorite comedian that you go to get some endorphins from laughter? Or?
Sure. Well, when I tried to go, I couldn't. They didn't give me a ticket in time, but I tried to get in the audience for Real Time with Bill Maher this past Friday. But I'm tried again for next Friday. But I watch Maher a lot. I mean, it's just, for me, it's like I used to hate this guy.
Yeah.
And then now he's one of my heroes.
Yeah.
And I love. I definitely listen to Jim Jeffries. Do you know who that is?
Yeah.
Comedian.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's this comedian that has cerebral palsy that is absolutely hilarious. I forgot his name, but his whole bit is making fun of himself for his disability, and just a guy that's able to embrace the lemons that life gave him that way.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like going to the movies.
Yeah.
It's kind of the traditional idea that it's an escape from real. We get in dark theater for 2 hours and watch a different world for a couple hours. But
I hear that. Yeah.
No, I probably write too much. I probably should balance. And if you don't have if you're not in a relationship, and maybe it causes to not balance as much because you spend too much time on other things. But at the same time, I feel like I need to get all these books out of me.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So what's a recent movie that stuck with you or that impacted you?
Well, the last movie I went and saw was Annabelle, Creation.
Oh, the scary one.
I love horror movies.
Yeah.
I love horror movies. And yeah.
Was it any good?
It was good.
Got a pretty high
It
number.
wasn't as good as the original one, but it was good. I just watched a documentary, 3-part. It's called Geniuses of History, and it was more recent. It went through Karl Marx, Darwin, and Nietzsche. I found that very interesting. Learned a lot about it. And then it had one of ancient history, which was Socrates, the Buddha, and Confucius.
Wow.
And I love documentaries, and especially when they're docudramas where they...
Yeah.
And what was that one called again?
Geniuses of History.
Geniuses of History. And is it on Netflix? Where did you see that?
Yes.
On Netflix. All right, great.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, the last Netflix thing I watched was The Most Hated Woman in the World. It was about Madalyn Murray O'Hair.
Oh, I would love to watch that. Yeah, The Most Hated Woman.
Because he's one of the people that I've got connected with is Frank Zindler. Do you know who that is?
Sounds familiar, but no.
Okay. Well, he's almost 80 years old, but I've known him for about 5 years now. I looked him up. He used to be the president of American Atheist after Madalyn stepped aside, and he was like her right-hand man for 20 years. He's on the board of American Atheist, and they brought in the producer of that movie because he had some factual errors in it about the idea that she had these offshore accounts that were just what she would use on her vacation time, and that's what she was really got kidnapped for, which she got kidnapped for money, but I don't think she had these offshore accounts that she was setting aside just for herself, and that's kind of the idea that it was trying to portray.
There's a book called The Most Hated Woman in the World. I think I have that book. So maybe it's based on that book. I would love to see that.
I think so. But Frank Zindler's been one of my, like, I spent the night at his place in Columbus. He lives in Columbus, Ohio. Before I came out here, he's definitely been one of the greatest helps to be transitioning out.
Yeah, I bet.
Cool.
Peace in a new life.
Yeah, that is a hell of a story, too.
Yeah.
The way she got chopped up. Ugh, terrible. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Dustin, I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's a
What a
fascinating story, and I think people can find your books on Amazon, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. This is one of the things therapeutic things is to talk about it.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody would be, but would you be open to giving out maybe an email address if one of our listeners, maybe you said something that sparked them and they want to open dialogue with you? Would you be willing to give out?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Dustin.Lawson1984 @gmail.com, and my name is DustinLawson.
Yeah.
Dustin.Lawson 1984
At Gmail. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Is 84 the year of your birth?
Yes.
Okay. I graduated from high school in 84, so I must be 18 years older than you.
Yeah. Yeah, about that, I'd say.
One of my favorite, the book 1984 by
Sure.
Orwell.
Yeah.
It opens up on April 2nd, 1984, and I was born on April 3rd, 1984. So it's always like it's one of my favorite books, and I've always liked that I was born the day after that first journal entry of the main character.
Yeah.
Boy.
Well, thanks again, man. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk soon.
All right.
Thanks
for having me
Dustin.
on.
Yeah, you got it, man. Old Dusty Lawson right there.
You sound like old friends.
Yeah.
Fascinating guy, man. I just think
What a strange story, strange life, huh?
I love truth is stranger than fiction. I just think people's real lives are so fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, the lion thing. Well, first the Jesus thing, then the lion thing with the eating of your foot and
the persistence after cancer to get in the military.
Yeah, and the working with Josh. What was his name?
Josh McDowell.
Who was sort of the.
He was the lead apologist in Christianity.
Who would be the lead now?
William Lane Craig, probably today.
Okay, so there's always somebody out there saying, no, you haven't.
Yeah.
And they want to argue with you about it.
And then the guy that wrote Case for Christ.
Strobel? Lee Strobel. Yeah.
Strobel's up there.
Huh.
I want to say Tim Keller maybe too. Are the guys that are kind of the heavy hitters today.
Yeah.
Obviously C.S. Lewis in his day would have been a chief apologist, but not in the same vein as these guys.
Yeah.
He wasn't near as dogmatic.
Right.
But he did, make an attempt to make Christianity reasonable,
right,
and accessible to thinkers. And a lot of times you have to kind of check your logic at the door. Faith is kind of the absence of evidence. I mean, It's like, okay, if you're trying to get to Christianity via evidence, which is all these apologists kind of
what they push. Yeah,
they're appealing to that crowd. But there's a whole another side of Christianity that says I don't use that at all. I already acknowledged that I don't have any evidence for what I believe. I just believe it.
And that's faith. Yeah.
And that's faith. And that's, again, it's a conversation ender.
Yeah. Nothing to talk about there.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, because people can believe whatever they want, and it's nobody else's business, and that's true. So anyway, he was, and we were at a meeting last night where a guy said that his faith dissolved in the process of studying it.
Isn't that interesting?
Like you think you're, and also in Dustin's case, he thinks he's really gonna, gird up his faith, gird up his belief, and really double down and strengthen his resolve to be a Christian and to love God with all his heart and all this, and by way of argumentation or the building of what is it when you presupposition one, presupposition
evidence.
And it just building an argument from line by line. If this, then that. If this, if then statements, and just came up with some discovered, like he said, the holes in Josh's, arguments. And
that's something.
And I know it's been a while. It sounds like it's been about 10 years, so it's not fresh. But he did talk about how difficult it was, and
about losing family, friends, that type of stuff.
The external pain of losing relationships, but the internal upheaval of how now shall I live, and what's the meaning of life, and his desire to get in the military was a direct result of like, all right, if I can't populate heaven and make the world a better place, by saving souls, and maybe I can save lives and protect American liberties or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Whew. Well,
good guy.
Yeah, I like talking to him, and he's a hardworking writer, and that's the key. Keep writing. It's hard. It's the hardest thing.
I didn't get to ask him about community because honestly, if I were to say, like, just a real raw first impression of hearing his life, he sounds lonely.
Yeah, lonely, introverted. Yeah.
So I mean, maybe.
And he's a very nice looking guy too.
Oh yeah, he's very handsome.
Yeah. So, good luck to him. Proximity, man. Proximity.
Well, and again, when you're kind of trained that God's going to bring a woman into your life. I mean, there's a lot that he figured out that it's not going to land in my lap. And he became a persistent person.
Yeah, that's
post faith, because he figured out there's no God bringing this about anymore. Right. It's just me, and that's the way the world works. And if you want something, you're going to have to go get it.
Go for it. Yeah.
And 15 times he tried to get in the military.
That's right.
Rejected 15 times before he got in or something like that.
Yeah, unbelievable.
So hats off to him.
Yeah.
Hope we learned something by, listening and reflecting on the life of a kind of a go-getter guy.
Yeah. Always out there trying. That's great.
I'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, I like that. Let's do it again. See you later.